In the early hours of the 28th of July, 2025, a nightmare called floodwater came crashing into Beijing. After days of relentless and unusual rainfall pounding the Yanshan Mountains, water levels at the Miyun Reservoir, the largest freshwater reservoir in northern China, exceeded the safety limit. By 4:45 a.m., authorities made the urgent decision to release the water, with a discharge rate reaching 4,500 cubic meters per second. The swirling torrent shot out of the dam like an enraged dragon, tearing down the Chao River with terrifying force. In less than 30 minutes, suburban districts like Shunye and Huairu were swallowed by a rising sea. Cars were swept away like toys, highways cracked open, and power substations exploded like fireworks in broad daylight. By 6:30 a.m., Beijing's power grid had completely collapsed. As the floods surged through Chaoyang District, home to government offices and foreign embassies, the city was thrown into unprecedented chaos. People screamed as they climbed onto rooftops, while thousands were trapped in basements and subway stations. Videos spread rapidly across social media, showing hundreds of cars floating aimlessly and buildings submerged up to their third floors. Witnesses recalled that the water rose to an adult's neck in just 15 minutes, leaving no time to react. Many experts later referred to it as a dual-tech disaster, where nature and human error collided to unleash a living hell. But what no one expected happened just 70 minutes later. The Daishuiyu Dam, located downstream along the Sha River, a major tributary of the Chao, couldn't withstand the sudden pressure from the emergency release. At 5:56 a.m., the earthen dam gave way completely, unleashing a second wave of destruction that wiped out everything in its path. From that moment on, the two floods merged into a single, unprecedented deluge. Within just 2 hours, outer districts like Miyun, Huairu, Shunyi, and Pinggu were submerged under 1.5 to 3 meters of water. The Beijing-Harbin Expressway was completely severed. Overpasses and subway line 15 disappeared beneath the flood, trapping thousands inside train cars. More than 1.3 million people were forced to evacuate immediately. But amid the chaos, tens of thousands were left behind, stuck on rooftops, in underground garages, or inside buildings with no electricity and no phone signal. The Chao River was no longer the calm stream that once flowed peacefully through northeastern Beijing. It had transformed into a raging flood, sweeping away everything in its path, from homes and vehicles to once bustling neighborhoods. What was once a vital source of life for millions had become a river of death, carrying mud, trash, and the shattered remains of an entire city. And it didn't stop there. The flood surged downstream, prompting first-level red alerts in cities like Langfang and Tianjin.
宝鸡的山洪爆发了啊！是尖山沟 冲出来的水，脏水带着杂物。
Water levels in major rivers such as the Yangding and Bai rose sharply, posing serious threats to dikes, power plants, and riverside neighborhoods. The entire North China region was placed under its highest state of emergency in years. Experts stated that a combination of poorly coordinated emergency discharges, the outdated design of the Daishuiyu Dam, and the absence of a multi-dam response plan were the main causes of this compounded disaster. But for the people of Beijing, this wasn't a technical failure. It was their lives, swept away in a matter of hours, leaving behind scars too deep to forget. Rescue teams were dispatched immediately, but encountered overwhelming challenges. The water rose so quickly that many firefighting and military units were stranded in the current. Helicopters tried to reach high-rise rooftops to airlift residents, But with fierce winds and torrential rain, many missions had to be aborted. A major hospital in Haidian district had its entire basement flooded, shutting down its oxygen systems and critical medical equipment. 38 patients died within just 30 minutes due to the power outage and the inability to receive emergency care in time. A local resident said, "I've lived here for over 30 years. I've seen storms, landslides, everything, but I've never witnessed anything like that day. The water didn't just flood the streets, it came like a wild beast. It swallowed the whole neighborhood. My next-door neighbors had an elderly person who couldn't escape. I heard a scream, then silence. We couldn't save them. No one could. And to make matters worse, the rain still hasn't stopped. Experts are warning of landslides and the potential failure of secondary dams if the heavy downpours continue." Authorities in Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei have launched 24/7 hydrological monitoring systems, sharing real-time data every hour. But for those still trapped in the floodwaters, every hour that passes can mean the difference between life and death. Rescue workers in Mujiayu town said they'll never forget the eyes of the people they pulled out of the flood. "We had to break down the door of a 2-story house. Inside were 16 people, some of them already weak from hunger and dehydration, shaking uncontrollably. That rescue happened in a storm of panic and desperate cries for help." As of noon, on the 28th of July, 2025, over 120 people were confirmed dead. More than 35 of them died instantly when the floodwaters hit too fast in outer districts like Miyun, Wairu, and Shunyi. Over 500 people were reported missing, mostly the elderly, children, and night shift workers trapped in submerged buildings or subway tunnels. Emergency rescue teams were deployed overnight, and through the early morning of the 28th, dozens of fire brigades, military units, and volunteers worked together using rubber boats, thermal sensors, and drones to scan the hardest-hit areas. However, thick layers of mud and powerful currents made rescue efforts extremely difficult. The Beijing city government raised the flood alert to level 1, the highest possible, and ordered a full shutdown of the eastern and northern metro lines. All activities in the suburban districts were suspended. Weather forecasts predicted more heavy to torrential rain over the next 24 hours in the Beijing and Hebei regions, meaning the threat of cascading floods and landslides remains dangerously high. Authorities urged residents not to return to low-lying areas and to stay in contact with local rescue teams for emergency support. In the moment when the entire city was swallowed by a raging torrent, we came to a painful realization: it's not technology, not concrete walls, but preparation and compassion that truly save lives. The casualty numbers are only the surface of this tragedy. The real pain lies in the eyes of the survivors, in the ruins of broken homes, and in the names that are still being called out with no answer. Beijing will recover, but the scars left on its people may never fully heal. Let this day be remembered, not to instill fear, but to awaken us, because sometimes disaster doesn't come from nature. It comes from our own complacency.